Hi, thank you so much for watching the Louie file today. This is my fourth installment of God Declares the End from the Beginning. We have already looked at the life of Abram, and we looked at the life of Joseph, and we looked at the life of David. So today we're going to look into the New Testament, and we're going to look at Paul, the Apostle Paul, and see what happened with him. In Acts chapter 9, it starts off talking about Saul. Now, the man Saul is the same man who became the Apostle Paul, so don't let that confuse you. But at the beginning of Acts chapter 9, it says that Saul was breathing out threats and murder. I mean, he was a Jew of Jews, a Hebrew of Hebrews. He was very zealous for the law of God and for the people of Israel, and he was adamant about doing what God had called him to do. And he felt led. He thought God's will in his life was that he would eradicate this sect of Christians, these people that had followed Jesus, and he thought that they were heretical and it was just a falsehood, and he had to stamp it out. That's what he thought he was called to do. Well, in Acts chapter 9, we see where Jesus shows up, the resurrected Jesus, that is, and tells Saul, reveals himself to Saul and says, "No, wait a minute, you're fighting me. You're not with me." So, but he tells Saul, or then Paul, I'm just going to call him Paul. He tells Paul his end. He declares his end from the beginning. And Jesus says to him, this is Acts 9, verse 15. It's actually Jesus spoke to Ananias, and Ananias went to tell Paul, but you get the point if you read the chapter. Acts 9, verse 15, it says, "But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine," or vessel of mine, "to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel. For I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake." Ooh. So right there, Jesus is declaring to Paul the end from the beginning. The beginning of Jesus' relationship with Paul, he's telling him what he's going to do. He's telling him what's going to happen. He says, you're a chosen vessel, and you're going to declare my name before the Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel. And you're going to suffer for my name's sake. Wow. So what's the point here? If you know about the Apostle Paul's life, his journey started here, and he goes through a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. In fact, in Acts 14:22, the Apostle Paul said, "Through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom." So he understood that trouble was part of the journey. He understood that. You know, and I'm afraid that there's a lot of Christians, and it may be the fault of teachers sometimes, that don't fully get the fact that life is hard. Even with Christ in you, it's difficult. You know, stuff just comes against you. There's accusation, there's failures, there's misunderstandings, there's an enemy, there's flesh, there's all these things that make us weak or powerless and that affect our journey. There's other people that we have to live around, right? I mean, not everyone sees the vision. Not everyone knows what God is declaring to you about your life. But this is where faith comes in, and we hear God speak to us in a personal way, and we put our faith in that, and we hold on to that, and we trust in that, no matter how the outward appearances come and go, right? That's what I want you to take away from this. In Acts 23, if you will, jump ahead a little bit, Acts 23, verse 11, Jesus shows up and reassures Paul. He says, Acts 23:11, "But on the night immediately following, the Lord stood at his side and said, Take courage. For as you have solemnly witnessed to my cause at Jerusalem, so you must witness at Rome also." So Jesus is reassuring Paul, I'm going to get you where I want to get you. But see, he didn't know that in between. Now see, I mean, you go back and watch my other videos on this series about God declaring the end from the beginning. There's a lot of trouble in people's lives. You know, Joseph went through a lot of trouble in his life to see the vision, the dream that God gave him come to fruition. King David went through, I mean, he was being hunted by Saul. before he actually got on the throne. He was anointed years before, and it took a long time before he saw himself literally, physically on the throne. It's through great tribulation, is what the Apostle Paul tells us. And Paul went through tribulation. But God declared to him, you're going to speak my name, you're going to be a witness for me to kings, and you're going to suffer. So Jesus reiterates in Acts here that he's going to Rome. But Paul doesn't know that his journey to Rome is going to be as a prisoner, that it's going to be under armed guard, that it's going to be based on an accusation against him that wasn't really true. Everywhere Paul went, he declared the gospel, and people got up in arms, and there's riots broke out because it was disturbing the dark forces in those territories. And Jesus was coming through the Apostle Paul. The true King of Kings and Lord of Lords was being declared, and his victory over death, hell, and the grave was causing disturbances. And Paul got to see the brunt of that, but he kept the faith and he kept persevering, and that's what I'm asking you to do, no matter what you come against. In fact, in 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 33, and I'm not going to read this for you today, you can look it up and read it yourself. 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 33, Paul gives us a list of things that he has gone through for the sake of the gospel and the sake of those Corinthians and Christians that he is in contact with. I just jotted down a couple of them here. Paul was imprisoned. He was beaten. He was whipped with rods and lashes. He was stoned. He was shipwrecked. Said he was in danger from rivers and robbers, Gentiles, false brethren. And all the while, on top of that, he had his concern for the church. He felt like he was a father to these people. And he was tore up about it. But you know what? What was his purpose? What was the plan here? You know, and I came across something I thought was a pretty good summary of that in Philippians. Let's see what it is. Philippians 3, I think it is. I'm going to make sure. Philippians 2. So the Apostle Paul is encouraging the Philippians here to be joyful and to hang on, to work out their salvation, but it was God in them working this thing out, really. And he is encouraging them. Philippians 2:14, he says, do all things without grumbling or disputing, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God, above reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain nor toil in vain. But even if I'm being poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I rejoice and share my joy with you all. You too, I urge you, rejoice in the same way and share your joy with me. The Apostle Paul is encouraging us today to keep pressing. No matter what comes against us, keep pushing. Keep pushing straight ahead. So that even if your life is poured out, that it would be worthy to be poured out on their faith, on our faith. So he's handing the baton to the Philippians and he's saying, keep going. Keep going. God declares the end from the beginning. And the end result is God saying, I am in charge, I am in control, and I have a plan, and it will come about. Join me. Jump in this purpose with me. Jump in with me and be part of this plan. It's not always going to be easy. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be painful. It's going to be frustrating. But by faith, we're going to hang on. You know, the story in the gospel, Jesus told the disciples, get in the boat, we're going to the other side. Well, about midway to the other side, a storm comes up. And the panic sets in, the disciples get fearful, they wake up Jesus and he looks at them, he calms the ocean, he calms the storm, and he looks at them and he sort of questions their faith. Where is your faith? And they do make it to the other side. Well, Jesus declared, we're going to the other side. Along the way, a great storm came and it brought in fear and anxiety. But we are called to, by faith, receive the declaration. We are going to the other side. No matter how stormy it gets, folks, we're going to the other side, according to the gospel message. All right, thanks for joining me in these videos. I enjoy them. I hope they have brought encouragement and enlightenment to you. And I'll see you next time on the Louie File. Thanks for watching.